Hi, David's here.
All right, David. I just conked mine just conked out and I can't got back in. So something's going on here in case you guys um have any difficulties. Anybody else having issues with maintaining connection?
Nope.
No.
You're in a
All
new
right.
location though, Alan. So
Well, I'm
this is
out on
your
the porch. I'm only a few feet from my study, so I should be okay. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Who are we missing?
I think Kelly, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, Eric.
I think Kelly was having a hard time getting on. Did she make it?
I don't see Kelly.
She just came on.
Is she on? I see.
Yep.
There's Kelly. Microphone is off. Okay, I think everybody's here, and it's 6:33. So we'll call the community of the whole to order. Dr. Kincaid.
Yeah, I should probably have that up, huh? Hold on.
Okay. Is my mic on?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Hi, Kelly.
Thanks for
Hello.
joining. Nice to see you.
Thanks.
Just so everybody knows, I talked to Eric today, Kincaid that is, and we are going to be going live meetings in July. That's the plan.
Right.
That seems to be the consensus among his colleagues, and it will also hopefully permit larger group gatherings. So this will be probably our second to last board meeting virtual.
Yeah. Alan, the first thing on the agenda, we can take some time with this because it's a little bit complicated. And unfortunately, I don't have all of the answers for this right now, but we found out late last week that every district in the state is going to be required to come up with what they're referring to as a health and safety plan. And in that health and safety plan, what the districts are required to do is we're required to submit 3 different potential plans for reopening of school. We have to submit a plan as if we were in red, one for yellow and one for green. Okay. The interesting thing is that there isn't another one. Green isn't back to normal. Green is just green as we know it, groups of 25 or fewer. So we're hoping that they eventually come up with another color, which is like, blue or purple or something that's a back to normal color. But for now, we have to come up with these 3 plans. The plan is basically, it evolves around health and safety. So it evolves around wearing masks and how you're going to transport and how you're going to eat lunch, how you're going to check for students who are healthy or not healthy, what you're going to do if you have a student or a staff member who is sick or has a fever. What we decided to do, though, is we decided to expand that a little bit to be to make it more of an all-inclusive plan, because there are some other areas that we feel like we really need to address thoroughly before we attempt to come back to school. So we've developed 8 areas. Can you show that, Molly, or no? I know you don't have it in front of you, but we've developed 8 areas of focus. And our areas of focus are, Molly might be able to show this to you in a second. I probably could too, but. Well, as she's pulling that up, I'll tell you. Our areas of focus are food service. So, in other words, how are we going to feed kids? Where are kids going to eat? What do lunches look like? Are they going to be boxed lunches? Are they going to be, are we going to have a la carte again? Are we going to feed everyone like we're doing now? So there's a lot to consider when it comes to food service. The next one is transportation. And transportation is probably one of the more complicated ones, because right now they're telling us that the guidelines are 1 child per seat. So that would mean 24 children on a bus. That's going to take multiple runs to get kids here. And of course, right now we just have 3 runs, an elementary or a high school, middle, and elementary. So the transportation is going to have to look at all of those sorts of things. How we get kids here. What about extracurriculars? What about field trips? All those sorts of things. The third one is, oh, there it is. The third one that we developed was facility management. So this one is pretty much what it says there. Like, how are we going to keep the buildings clean? When do we do deep cleanings? How do we disinfect? What surfaces get hit daily, multiple times a day, etc. And that includes, the grounds and the playgrounds and the fields and things like that. Teaching and learning is probably the biggest one. This could easily be 2 groups. So Justin will be heading this one up. And this is not only how we're delivering instruction, but also how our students are learning. What format? Is it a hybrid approach? Are we doing strictly online? Are we doing some online and some face-to-face? Are we doing all face-to-face? There are tons of considerations here. And I'll just give you kind of a little snippet. Like there's been talk of having all kids in school and at home. So doing, some in face-to-face learning, some online learning. There's been talk of not having the high school kids come in at all and rather use the 3 buildings for elementary and middle and allow the high school kids to be all online. There's been some talk of, with our younger learners, K-3, maybe even K-4, having them come in every day, but having other students do an A-B schedule. So there's lots of considerations here for this committee. We have a large meeting tomorrow at the intermediate unit with all the school districts as well as the Department of Health. So we're hoping to get some additional direction about some of these ideas tomorrow. So I'll be able to provide more information soon. The next committee is special education. This one might not be worded quite correctly. This one maybe should say something more along the lines of equity, because it's not just kids who are special education kids. It'd be also gifted students with 504 plans. How are we implementing their IEPs and providing necessary resources and support and guidance and accommodations for those students? Kim Heberly, our psychologist, is going to be heading up the behavioral health. So making sure that our students and our families are being supported from a emotional and mental health standpoint during all of this. Communication is an important one. That's one that I'll be chairing. Just keeping information flowing to our community and our family and our board and our teachers and our parents. And then the last one there is health and safety. That'll be John and Deputy Raz. Well, actually, that'll be Deputy Raz's committee, along with some other folks that are just looking at how the nurses will be on that one too, monitoring health, keeping everyone safe while they're in school, et cetera. Alan, what I did, I hope this is okay. I wanted some board input on these committees. I don't expect you all to be able to meet when we meet, but I wanted to at least give you the opportunity to. And so what I did is I just went ahead and sort of randomly, mostly randomly, assigned a board member to a committee. The people who are heading these committees, food service is Paul Krasinski. Alan, I put you on that one. I just kind of went around the horn here, president and vice president. So Jen, I put you on transportation. That's Ed's committee. Facility management is John. Eric Hayes, I added you to that one. Teaching and learning, that's Justin's group. I put 2 board members on that one because it's a large committee. So I put Pam and Lori on that one. Special education, David, I added you to that. Behavioral health, Fran, I put you on that one. Kelly, I put you on mine to help me with communication. You sometimes have some good input on information getting out to parents and what you're hearing and what they're not hearing. So I thought that might be helpful for me. And then Jim, I added you to health and safety to work with Deputy Raz on the security side of things. Each of these department heads are these chairs of these committees are going to be scheduling meetings. And I'm going to have them include you. If you can make it, fine. If you can't, that's okay too. But we would love your input on that if you're able to. And the idea here is we added anywhere between 10 and 15 people to these committees, teachers and aides, and there's pretty good cross representation from the buildings. There's a lot of parents included because they're on the staff. So we have administrators, teachers, support staff, and now a board member on all of these committees. The idea is for all of the heads of the committees, the chairs of the committees, to come back to our group with recommendations then to put this master plan together. So we're going to try to kill two birds with one stone with this master plan. It's going to be a master plan of all 8 areas of focus. And at the same time, we're going to develop our health and safety plan, which is a requirement. So this that you're seeing in front of you right now, this areas of focus, this is not a mandate from the state. This is not something we have to do. It's just something we think makes a lot of sense to do administratively, looking at these, what we consider kind of the 8 important areas and coming back. And then from this, it'll be fairly easy to develop the health and safety plan. They did give us a template for the health and safety plan. It's not hard. It's a lot of work though, because it's plans, like I said, within each of those 3 colors. So we will have our work cut out over the next several weeks, but Justin and I are attending the meeting at the intermediate unit tomorrow, and we should get some good feedback. We have 3 administrative interns right now, interning at the central office, Luke and Julie and Ryan Bookhammer. And the 3 of them are each going to take, once these plans are, all the information is brought back to Justin and myself, Julie, Ryan, and Luke are each going to take 1 color, yellow, green, and red, and pull everything together to make the plan more comprehensive and easy for us all to understand. Our school board does have to approve the health and safety plan template. We'll have to approve that as a board. So hopefully we'll be able to present that back to the board in July for approval. And that has to be published on our website. We also have to train all of our staff before they return to school based on all of the things that we incorporate into the plan. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's pretty new information. We just found out, like I said, on Thursday that this was coming. And we've been, all the superintendents got together Thursday, talked about it, and we're getting together again tomorrow. I will tell you that one of the recommendations that may come out of our meeting tomorrow, I tell you all this each year, but we end up sort of doing our own thing anyways, and most districts do. We are always encouraged each year to adopt the county calendar. And the county calendar, sometimes I call it the tech school calendar because that's where we make it, at the tech school. But we always veer from that a little bit, mainly because of our spring break and some other things that are other days that are sort of sacred cows here or contractual here. But there is a lot of talk this year from the districts, and George, maybe you're hearing this from your other districts, but there is a lot of talk this year of being very consistent as a county and even maybe as an intermediate unit, so that we all have the exact same calendar to work on this year. So I may be coming back in July also with a recommendation to alter the 2021 board approved calendar for next year. Some of the considerations are probably not going to fly. One of the considerations that was discussed at length last week was actually starting the school year earlier and taking more of a higher ed approach. They're telling us that there's an 80% chance, this is from the Department of Health, there's an 80% chance that we have a resurgence in the months of December or January. So higher ed is taking the approach, they're scheduling that time off. They're scheduling it so that if it happens, they're prepared. If it doesn't happen, it's just scheduled time off. So there was some talk about starting the school year in August, earlier in August, and then scheduling like the month of between mid-December and mid-January off. I don't think that's going to fly. Starting in early August, I don't think is going to be very popular. It takes away our best month in Erie County, and I think it interferes with too many summer jobs and vacations and things like that. But starting maybe after Labor Day and then altering the calendar so that we still have a chunk of time off in that peak season might make more sense. So that will be a topic of discussion tomorrow, and I'll report back as soon as I hear. Questions about the plan itself? Do we have that, Molly? Did we put that in reference materials for the board to see?
I believe I did, but I will do that right now.
Yeah, we'll add that into the reference so you can see the plan, you can see the template. As I said, these areas of focus that we've established, we sort of just came up with these administratively on our own. They don't necessarily correspond with the plan, but we can extract, once we have these areas of focus developed, it'll be pretty easy to extract from that and develop the plan.
Eric, this is
Yep.
Fran. You had said that the health and safety was due by July. When are the others due at the same time?
No, so the health and safety plan is really the only plan that's due, Fran.
Okay.
It's not due by July, it's due before we start school again. But the reason we want to have it approved in July is because there's a requirement within that plan that all staff members have to be trained prior to returning to school. So if we get it approved on July 13th, that'll give us ample time to get everybody trained. I don't really know what that means at this point because I don't know what the plan's going to entail quite yet. And a lot of it's going to be guesses based on those three fellows.
I think what the higher ed was doing, the reason for taking the whole chunk of mid-December to mid-January was because they didn't want students going home for any length of time, like going home for 3 or 4 days for Thanksgiving, for instance, and then coming back again. They wanted to just keep them there and then give them the longer breaks, so that it would hit during that crucial period. But also, they weren't going back and forth and bringing things back to the campus.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're coming up with the 80% likelihood of a resurgence, but that's a pretty strong likelihood.
Yeah.
Do we have any sense whether the union would be supportive of a calendar change as far as anything that's contractual?
So the only thing, Pam, contractual is our start date.
Okay.
Our start, and actually we violated the contract with our start date this year. It's just because of the way August falls this year. But we violated the contract by starting, because I think the contract says we can't start school prior to the last Friday in August. But this year, because I think there's 5 Fridays in August, we ended up starting before that, and we just had to come up with a MOU for them to get on board with that. So I think that there would be a union issue, maybe a broader PSEA issue if we attempted to start school at the beginning of August. I don't think that would go over well.
Yeah, but beginning versus middle versus, depending, I don't know. If you have a month off in the middle of winter, some people may like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the superintendents and the intermediate unit, as soon as we make a decision on what we think is best for our region, we're going to have a conversation with the representatives of PSEA. I mean, obviously, we'll have a conversation with our local reps as well, but Dean Maynard is going to engage in a conversation with the reps in Edinburgh to try to get them on board so that they can trickle down to the locals. I think teachers right now, I think the PSEA, both teachers and support staff, I think they understand that they have to be flexible and work with districts right now. So I anticipate that they will.
I think there's also, even though every district has their own issues, I think there is a swelling of support someplace to have a countywide calendar. There's a lot of cross movement, and I know that a lot of people have expressed a desire for that, but there is that whole individual district contractual issue that has prevented that.
That's right. Yeah, we try every year to stay as close to the county calendar as we can. But everyone sort of has their own thing. Some districts like to start after Labor Day. Some districts like to start before. We have a day in our contract that is a contractual work day. It's the day after the first semester. I know that Mill Creek has, what do they call them, recording days, something like that built into their contract. So
Yes.
it's hard because everyone has their own unique things. I don't know. I don't think the Monday after Thanksgiving is really the first day of hunting anymore, is it? Wasn't something changed with that?
Correct.
But it's in our contract that it's a day off. So teachers and support staff and administrators. And we take, for example, we take we shut the district down on Martin Luther King Day. Not every district does. So we're going to try to get close, though. That's a goal this year. And if there was any year to do it, it's this year with districts. It's just going to be that start date that's going to be a challenge, I think, if we try to change that. George, is there anything else that our board will have to consider if we change the already approved calendar? Is it just a new motion?
Yeah, it would just be a new motion at this point.
Okay. And we would have to educate folks and get that out because Molly can tell you, we start getting a lot of calls at the central office right before that calendar is published. People are trying to make plans, whether it be vacation plans or travel plans or what have you. Now, some of that could change now. I don't know if people are going to make those same trips that they've traditionally made in the past. Hard to say. So, more to come on that. Any other questions about any of those 8 committees or the health and safety plan itself? I'll get a draft of that out well in advance of us approving it. We'll go over it very thoroughly in committee of the whole. We may be able to even to push that to the first August meeting. What's that date, Moss? Early? 10th?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see how that develops and starts to come together before we make a decision on that. But we're going to start working hard on that. That's something that is a number one priority for us right now because it really drives everything. It drives our schedule. It drives our transportation, our food service, what our families are going to do in terms of getting kids to school. There could be some real challenges this year. We want to work with everyone and be as cooperative as possible. At the same time, we don't want to lose kids to cyber, and that's a concern. That's a major concern of mine. I've told our administrators, and they know this. Like we can't repeat if we are doing online learning, distance learning. We can't repeat what we did the last 3 months. It's not good enough. So if we don't get better at it, we're going to lose people. And we're going to lose people to the tune of $12,000 to $15,000 per student. So that's going to mean developing some additional content over the summer and ramping up our cyber program. We know from our survey that we administered a couple of weeks ago that we are going to have some people, no matter what, who are going to want all cyber. And their children are not coming back to school until there's a solution to this, either a cure or some kind of vaccine. So we know that we're going to have to ramp up what we do from a distance learning perspective, and we're working on that. Other thoughts or comments on that? Okay, if not, I will pass things over to Ed for the fun stuff. Mr. Barnes?
Thanks, Eric. Let me present my screen here. Is that showing up for everyone?
Yes.
No.
I'll give it just a couple seconds here. It's funny, I typically see the screen, but I don't see what you're saying right now, so.
I see your screen, which has some blocks of attendees and
Okay.
another block that says you're presenting to everyone.
Okay, excellent. Well, just let me know if anyone's having trouble seeing the screen. So typically what we do each meeting. I've got a reference folder that has some information that I will go back to. In this case, for budget 2021, I have a folder out there which has reference information that you can go back to. I'm not going to cover all these documents in detail, but I'll just tell you very quickly what's here. So this binder, this is the final budget document. Final meeting, it's in a form at this point that is pretty close to being, I guess, what you're looking for in terms of a final budget. You can see the cover page here has a summary of items, a final document. I don't know if anyone else can hear that. I'm getting a lot of feedback from someone's mic.
Yeah, I'm hearing it a lot too. If you could mute your microphone if you're not speaking, that would be helpful.
So anyway, that's much better. So this cover page has the highlights of what's in the budget. You can see the real estate tax increase is 2.5%. But anyway, in this document, there's a lot of detail of revenues and expenditures. So it's a good reference document if you ever want to go back and look at that. Budget scenarios, if you recall, I did 3 scenarios previously. And I added one, the third column here, revised proposed final budget. So I'll cover that in just a few minutes here. There's a detailed forecast, so you can actually see how I go through and calculate the forecast for the 5-year period based on all the revenues and spending areas out there. Homestead farmstead calculation, I'll cover the homestead farmstead stuff pretty quick here. And then there's a couple of PowerPoints, one from PASBO, one from PSBA, that are from the recent state budget presentation that both of those organizations made. So that's just reference info as well. So let me go back to the treasurer's report. So item 2, I'll bring up the May 2020 treasurer's report. So here we're looking at the general fund revenues, expenditures. You can see the differences there. We had 3 payrolls in June, so spending's probably a little higher than normal. So the typical month has 2 payrolls. There's 2 months that have 3. In this case, May 2020. And then you can see total cash and investments, $6,815,000. EIT, a little bit of weakness for the first quarter collections. We kind of expected that. So the shutdown started the middle of March, and I thought we'd be impacted to some extent. So you can see current month and year-to-date activity drop below last year's total by about 42,000. You can see the state revenue comparison there. And then in the notes section, we did get an update on Norbit, our medical funding account. So through March, and actually I didn't change the date, but this is through April. And this is not the current, that's not the current amount. Hang on a second. I did get the April report for Norbit. So through April, we have a deficit balance of 200,682. So it improved by about 22,000, and then a surplus since inception of 1,741,000. So continuing to see some improvement there, about 9 months. And then further down, I guess that would be it there. Cap projects, you can see the balance there, 9,912,000. All the funds we have invested are at either First National or Erie Bank. Erie Bank, we have the CD portfolio that we've had out there for some time now for cap projects. And I'll show you that detail pretty quick here. The district retirement benefit account balance is 739,000, and cafeteria fund loss of 30,460. I'll talk to you more about that in just a few minutes here once I get to that fund. So in terms of Go back to the PowerPoint here. Oh yeah, this is what I was looking for here. So you can see down in the notes section, as far as investment rates, I have the history of those rates through First National. So as of May 1st, bottom left-hand corner here, as of May 1st, they dropped the rate to 0.9%. That's from 1.65%. That's indicative of most short-term rates in the market. They're dropping fast and a fair amount. So most short-term rates are below 1% at this point. So for Norbit, let me just show you this graph. You can see April funding versus claims. So a little bit of a positive month there. And then the purple line, which uses the right scale, about 9 months worth of funding. And I'll tie this into our budget discussion in just a few minutes here. So we've got 1 month next year built into the budget. We have the potential to add more if we are looking to do that. EIT, you can see where May ended up below the previous couple of years, 2-3 years. And I'll skip down to the investments. So for investments, total for all funds, 17,632,000, and general fund, as I indicated earlier, 6,815,000, and you can see that breakdown up here. So in money market at First National, 0.9%, about 3.4 million. We still have a CD out there through First National at 1.9. That is good, I think, until December sometime. And then cap projects, 9,912,000. And you can see the breakdown of the CD portfolio there. So money market has 1,514,000. That's at 1.25 right now. And then you can see the rest of this year, one more CD will mature. That'll be in June. And then next year, you can see 3.5 million will mature sometime during the year, this next year. Range of 1 to 2.8%. And then you can see the 2 years or 2 to 3 years after. So that's cap projects. The district retirement benefit account balance is all at First National at the 0.9, and food service at First National at 0.25%. Cap projects, I talked about that already. You can see for the year so far, projects of 923,526. And then the district retirement benefit account. So here's food service, loss for the month of 22,306, and year to date 30,460. So when you look at the detail, show that to you real quick. So this is the account schedule in the treasurer's report that shows all the revenue sources year to date, and then all the spending year to date. So you can see on the spending side, equipment, 43,991. So this equipment we're buying has a useful life of 7 to 10 years. So this is going to benefit not only this year, but the next 7, 8, 9 years for a lot of that equipment. So we'll take this 43.9 and we'll depreciate 1/8, 1/9 of it each year. So once we make the adjustment, this loss back here of 30,460 will be closer to break even, probably a little bit above break even. And then in June, we still have the pickup of lunches and breakfast going. That's of course fully paid by the federal government through the CARES Act. And I expect that we'll be pretty close to break even once we get to the end of June. That's our expectation at this point. So through, I think it was May 5th, we're paying all employees. That stops, I'm sorry, as of June 5th, we're paying all employees. June 8th, that stops. So we're only paying as of June 8th the employees that are actually working. So between the shutdown start March 16 and June 5th, we had to pay all employees per Act 13. So even though we had maybe half the staff working for food service, we were paying the full staff through that period. So June 5th would be the last date that happens. You can see some summary there. Right here, you can see for the seamless summer option, the last column, we have total so far 16,320 lunches, almost 16,000 breakfasts that were served by that point in time. So that's the food service summary. Just want to show that to you real quick. So we're expecting to go through, I think, the end of the third week in June. That would be through June 26th. So we'll continue with our current serving through June 26th. We're still looking for the federal government to make a decision about whether we can continue to serve at the middle school, all families, or if it's just families that are qualified for free and reduced. You might recall that when we started serving, we were up at the Weiss Library Church at Milfair and Hyther. We did that for a few weeks until we got a waiver to come back to the middle school and serve all students there. So at this point, we don't have that waiver from the middle school, which means we either serve from the middle school for free and reduced kids or go back to Weiss Library to serve all kids. So those are the options there. So that's food service, treasurer's report, just a few other things here. Student activity balances at the high school, 47,000, at the middle school, 2,000. And then enrollment didn't really change much, it's down 2. As of the end of May, 1,803. And then a quick update on kindergarten. So as of the end of June, we had 106, I think was the total. I'm sorry, the end of May. So the end of May, we had 106 total versus I think 121 we had last year. So that's the kindergarten update. I think that's it on treasurer's report. If there's no questions on that, I'm going to move to final budget for 2021. So what I did, let me just pop back here real quick. In that folder that I showed you, that binder for 2021. So I changed the real estate tax increase to 2.5%. So back on May 4th, the board was looking for an increase not to exceed 2.9. So some expressed an interest in having it lower than 2.9, but I think for the most part, the group wanted to be below 2.9. So I set this one up at 2.5. We can still make changes before June 22nd. I would just need good direction today on what those changes would be. But anyway, tax increase of 2.5. The revenues and spending just over 28 million, and that includes use of our savings committed fund balance of 118,000. So this is down from the projected final back in early May. I had us using 336,000 at that point in time, so that's down to 118. I'll show you a comparison of those scenarios here pretty quick. Property tax reduction amount, 265,000. This relates to agenda item 4, which I'll cover in a few minutes here. But anyway, this money comes from gaming revenue through the state. It's revenue neutral to the district. We simply reduce our real estate taxes, reduce the tax bills in turn for each qualified homestead, and this becomes a source of revenue for the district, 265,156. So that's that binder. Let me go back to scenarios. So the proposed final budget was based on making these changes right here. So reducing the collection rate on real estate taxes from 95.8 to 95. That reduced revenue by 145,000. Reduced EIT by 257. Interest on investments by 58. Basic debt subsidy by 240. And delinquent real estate taxes by 50,000. So the total there was 750,000. And since that time, the state passed and approved legislation that keeps our funding for next year level with this current year. So I was able to take away that reduction. I kept all the other pieces in there, total of 510,000. So it improved by that 240. And the way we're offsetting those reductions is I increased real estate taxes to 2.5 from 2.4, which was back in the March 2nd draft that I presented to you. So that was, and then we also had an increase in assessed value. So really a pretty decent year for natural growth in the district, just shy of 12 million in natural growth. We've been seeing around 10 million or so the last few years. We're closer to 12. So between that 0.1% increase and then the increase in assessed value, we picked up real estate taxes of 113,000. The funding holiday through Norbit, 179,000. We have a couple of grants that have come through the federal government. One is through the CARES Act. The other, the state's calling safety and security. So both pieces give us a total of 350,000. We're including 100,000 of that 350 here to offset current spending that's currently set up in the budget. So that might offset some supplies, it might offset equipment, maybe some professional development. I know Justin's in the process of defining exactly what will be in those two grants, but that helped us offset some of the reduction. And then the committed fund balance or savings of 118,000, so that's the 510. So we're offsetting the decreases with those sources of funds. So let me go back to the PowerPoint here. So anyway, I got to this graph. I changed the 2021 budget to 2.5%, which I indicated earlier, and ran it through the forecast. And I'm showing the 5-year forecast at about 3.5%. That's at this point in time, based on what we know, we need increases of 3.5% each year. And the average for those 6 years is 3.35. There was one correction that I made. You might recall the previous forecast, which is here. So based on a 2.4% increase, I was telling you that we'd be at about 3.28. We're a little bit higher than that with a 2.5. I had to change the medical funding for the 5-year period. So we're taking a funding holiday here, right? And I had only 11 months built in to the 5-year forecast. By changing it to a full 12 months, it added back the 172,000 or so funding, plus level funding state revenue gave us an increase, offset some of that change to medical. So anyway, that's the forecasted increase of 3.5 based on a 2.5 increase. Now we can change this. I mean, this can go up a little bit or down a little bit. We can increase the committed fund balance and bring this 2.5 down. It's really what you're comfortable with as a group. So Alan, I don't know if you want to take a few minutes right now and just talk about those options.
Well, the preliminary budget was at 2.4. So obviously we had some favorable outcomes from the grants and the level funding from the state. So I certainly feel this is within, well within ballpark of our discussion from last time. How does anyone else want to share their comments or thoughts?
This is Fran. The 3.52 over the next 5 years then seems awfully high to me. I just wonder if we should take it up just a little bit, even if it's the 2.9% that we talked about, that might bring those 3.52s down just a little in the next few years. That's quite a jump. Something that would level off a little bit better than that.
Do we have any sense of how many districts are looking at a 0% increase?
I don't, Pam. Right now, I don't.
Because
I
I
read that
know
Mill
there's a
Creek is.
couple, and there. I mean, we know there's a couple, and
Yeah.
we have to be aware of how any increase looks. And you know, I understand like a 2.9 is going to level off, but everybody else is going to be playing catch up in the future, and the higher we go, the worse it's going to look.
And
In the short run.
Ed, have we heard anything on the Homestead Act stuff and that funding?
So yes, we do have homestead funding, David. That reduces the taxes a little bit for taxpayers. It's about $87 for a qualified homestead, so it isn't a huge help.
Right, but I had heard some rumors that it may not be funded because of, I think the money was coming from the casinos or somewhere. So my question is, has that funding been restored, or will our taxpayers be looking at, in a sense, a double hit, one from us and one from the lack of a Homestead Act discount?
The funding did get resolved.
Okay.
So the state took some CARES Act money from the federal government, and 300 million to be specific, and transferred it over to this fund that they use for property tax reduction. So it did get resolved, and we have in place about the same amount that we've had in previous years.
Okay, that's good news. I would tend to lead on the lower side to 2.5. I mean, you've got, I think Mill Creek and the city have already announced they're doing 0%. So
I think I have heard that, yes.
This
I will
is
tell you
Eric.
too that we have the opportunity next year. I mean, we don't know a lot now about what's going to happen next year, but we've been fairly conservative with our estimates for revenues and spending. And I think we'll have opportunities to bring that 3.5 down to some extent. So, just one idea is we have the Norbit funding. We have 9 months in that fund currently, and we're going to use 1 month next year. So we may have the opportunity to take a month the following year. It helps us out. It brings it down about 1%, the equivalent of 1% real estate tax. So there'll be things like that may help us. I mean, there could be things that hurt us too, but I have level funded state revenue as an example, no increase. Now, that could very well happen. But I think we'll have some chances to improve this.
I just don't like to see anything over 3%. I just think that gets, so if you think we can bring it down in the future years, that'd be great.
No guarantees, but I think we've got some ways to get it done. Remember too, we have the savings committed fund balance that we can use to offset some of that as well.
Anyone else want to chime in? I thought Eric Hayes, I thought you were going to.
Yes, hi, this is Eric. I just wanted to say that my concern is how it affects years going forward. If we reduce the increase this year and it negatively affects, it means that we have to pass larger increases in the future, then I think that doesn't appear to be smart. So I think we just have to, I realize there are a lot of moving parts in the budget, but the concern is by showing somebody a 0% increase for 1 year, are you really doing them any service when you would have to just raise taxes more in the following years to make up for that? I guess that's my question.
Which is what we did a few years ago. We did a 0%, and then the next year it was up over 3%. Just seeing it go up and down like that I'd rather see something a little more level, even if it meant just a little bit higher.
Fran, in your experience with the board, was that an issue in the past when it went above 3%? Was there a lot of kickback, or what was the feedback at that point?
Yeah, I heard a lot that it was just like, geez, do they only do the lower one because it happened to be one of the bigger election years? I think we had 5 board members or something, and so that wanted to get back on. And so, it just didn't look good to go so low, and then boom, after the election with 5 board members, it went up that high.
I will say that that was one of the perceptions, but if you recall, this was immediately following the effects of the Great Recession, and there was a statewide initiative to discourage any tax increases by any school districts. And so we went along, and we actually got concessions from our union folks to initiate a 0% wage increase that year as well, across the board, to match the 0% tax increase. And we did, you can't change perceptions, but this is the reason why I asked for this slide, be prepared, is to avoid, if you look at the preceding years, look at I call it whiplash, up, down, and around, in the budgeting. And I love more level budgeting is much more easier to manage. But I appreciate Fran's concerns, but I think there are counterweighing factors here, being we are heading into another recession. So to be on the lower end of our comfort level would be best, at least at this time. And I also agree with Ed that we usually do fare better in the years that follow than what's forecasted. So these 3 5s, there's a lot of ways to get those down. A lot of changes we can make going forward. This is just based on what we're doing right now. We can pull more out of committed funds. We can play with Norbit funding holidays. We can do a lot of those things to get under 3 in the years to come. But I agree with David. I think that we need to stay on the lower end of our comfort range, at least for this year. And since we were working with a 2.4 increase, so we'll come out of this with a 2.5. It's just kudos to Ed for putting those moving parts in place and bringing us a budget that is palatable.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with everything that Alan just said. I think being sensitive to the lower end at this particular moment and knowing we have some things in our back pocket as possibilities in the year to come, in the couple years to come. I mean, I'm very comfortable with where we've landed.
I just feel like if we go up toward that 2.9, then people are going to say that the only reason why we're doing that is because we want to renovate the building. And when we have to be sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of people in our community who may not have had their normal paycheck over the last couple months and who may still not going, for a little while. And we have to be sensitive to that and consider the fact that this is not perhaps the year for a large increase. And yes, we will have to play catch up, but so will the district with 0%. They're going to have to play a little bit more catch up than we are. So it's just being sensitive to what's going on in our community.
Just for a point of reference, our wage increases are a little higher than 2.5% on average. They're probably closer to about 2.7% on average when you look at our teachers, our support staff, and our Act 93 group. So 2.5 doesn't quite get us there as far as wages go, but I do also see some opportunities for other savings this year, Alan. Maybe not super popular ones, but I don't think we're going to be taking as many field trips as we have in the past. I think travel is going to be significantly reduced for both professional and support staff. So there will be some other now there might be some increases in spending too with some technology and equipment and other types of online learning tools that we may purchase. But overall, I agree with that. I think there will be some opportunity next year. We didn't have to make any of those really difficult staffing decisions that some other districts have had to make. And so those are always in our back pocket moving forward as well. It's easier through attrition, obviously, to make those decisions, and we'll always have that opportunity.
I kind of see the next year, I think at least the next year, being just as bad as it is right now. I just don't think it's going to get better quickly. So we just need to kind of keep that in mind too. And I'm okay with keeping it at 2.5 if you think we can bring those other numbers down in the future years. I just really don't like to see it go over 3. I think that's just too high, too big an increase for people to deal with.
Particularly when it's for the foreseeable future.
True.
Hey, Ed, this is Alan. Where we were about 3-1, weren't we? Last year, looking into this year. Yeah.
I can tell you that. Hang on one second.
You just had it.
Oh.
Looking at last year's slide, where they even go back. There you go.
Well, this is the one back on May
okay.
18th. This isn't
last year's.
This isn't last year, no. Hang on one second.
I think last year's slide had us above 3, and we landed at 2.5, if I recall correctly. That's what I'm saying. These are just forecasts.
I think you're right, Alan. I think it was over 3.
Yeah, I think these are forecasts that give us just to give us what's on the horizon as we do budgeting and we discuss increases. Certainly, as Pam said, if we go in at 0, we're going to be bumping up on the Act 1 index. If not, and obviously can't do that with a building project that is coming up without with our pledge to remain under Act 1. So looking in the past, at that slide, invariably, again, as Ed says, no guarantees, but invariably we end up landing, typically below those forecast levels when we hit budget time. So let's see.
Well, and it's another election year too, so
3.1, Alan. Yeah, that's right.
We could get some additional money next year in light of everything that's gone on in the districts. Pennsylvania, whether it's state money or federal money.
Yeah, I agree, Fran. Actually, what I was talking about, Ed, was last year's Alan Natale slide at this time. I don't want you digging for it.
No, this should be it. Do you see it? Is it on your screen?
Forecast 2021, March 2nd, 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this, the first year of the forecast would be. Oh wait. Oh, this is March 2nd. You're right. Hang on a second.
I'm just going from memory. I wanted to believe it was like 3.1, 3.13, 3.14, and we're landing at 2.5 using creative budget techniques. Obviously, all those same tools will be available to us next year. There you go. That's it. So last year we went at 3.5, correct?
That's right. Yep.
And so we were forecast to get 3.1, correct?
Yes.
So we're 0.6 below where we forecasted from this time last year.
Right. Yep.
So excellent job and doing what we need to do to make it happen. And I think with this, looking at where we were last year, looking at a 3.1, and now looking at a 3.5, if we can scrape just under 3 using the same techniques, I think we'll be okay. And maybe things will turn around better. No one really has the crystal ball, but I think this has been our experience generally, is that Ed, using this forecast, using level funding from the state, using level funding from EIT, I think that we'll be okay. I'm not saying trust me. I just think based on experience and how this has worked out in the past, I'm not too afraid of that 3.5. And bottom line, we're looks like we are clear of the Act 1 index, even with this forecast as presented.
Yeah, I think so, Alan. Going back to this slide, we did reduce our income taxes by 257,000. So, we're beginning to see folks go back to work, and who knows how quickly that's going to happen and the impact that'll have on wages. But this I thought was pretty conservative, meaning I think I brought it down more than the past recession. So I think the last recession it went down by about 13%. This is, I think, down 15% from current levels. So if the last recession is any guide, this should be a good number for this next year. But if we could recover quickly, we see people go back to work, say quicker than it happened after the last recession, which took about 3 years, we might see this number improve. Interest on investments, I don't see this coming back anytime soon. I think interest rates are going to be low for a foreseeable future, probably the next 2 or 3 years. I don't think that's going to change much. We will take our collection rate back up to 95.8, but obviously we'll look at our experience through 2021 as a guide to where this should be, for next year. And then delinquent real estate taxes is simply a guess. I'm just guessing that folks don't have the ability to pay at the same rate they've been paying in the past. And
one thing that Eric hit on, Eric Kincaid, is that the messaging here has to be about our fixed expenses. The fact that we do not have significant room in the budget for discretionary spending, and we have labor contracts that are fixed for at least for the terms at which they're set. And this coming year, if we're averaging 2.7%, and we're taxed, we have to raise the funds to cover that. That's not, obviously not the reason for an increase, but somebody's beeping their horn in front of me. I'm going to jump off. Oh, there he goes. But that's definitely something that folks have to know, is that we have obligations under our labor agreements. We have obligations under special education, and those obligations don't go away because of recession. And this isn't about building a high school addition so much as it is because we've seen the budgetary impact of that as fairly minimal. We've run the numbers. We've had those presentations. So when folks in the community are asking, why are we raising taxes 2.5% when City and Mill Creek are going in at zero? Say, well, because we don't want to whack you next year, and because we are fulfilling our obligations to our professional staff and to our special education community, and we are funding a renovation with minimal impact on the budget overall. So that's got to be the messaging.
Just a few more quick pieces of information on budget. So I updated the opportunities and risks slides that I showed a few months ago. So real estate natural growth, we typically show this as an opportunity, but this is now locked in. Our assessed value won't change for the tax bills that go out July 1st. So as indicated earlier, about 12 million in natural growth there. The state revenue, that is level funded, as I indicated, so that won't change. EIT is a potential for us. Retirements, we're locked in at 4. Medical funding, we have 1 that we've built in the budget for next year. And then committed fund balance, we're going to use 133,000. We have $1,494,000 in that account currently, so the balance will be that 1,494 less whatever we use for next year. And then on the risk side, Eric alluded to this, but the reentry plan, who knows? I mean, we could be getting hit with some higher transportation costs or some other things that like safety equipment or things needed in the buildings to keep kids safe. We do have the CARES Act and the safety security grants that'll give us an additional funding of $250,000. This is spending that isn't in the current budget. We'll bring it back to you as an amendment to the budget sometime probably in July. I think that Justin has to have those two grants submitted by the end of June. So we'll have a good idea July what those amendments will be. Enrollment could drive the need for new personnel, special ed, as Eric indicated earlier, and of course Alan mentioned this too, charter schools. We have 21 enrolled currently. The federal budget, we have no idea where that's going to go. It's been pretty stable the last several years. And then medical after 2021. We don't know where claims are going to go. We saw a little bit of a spike at the beginning of this year, but then it leveled off and improved for us. We got some funding through the second level of insurance, which helped our balance the last few months here. So in terms of timeline, I'm going to talk to you in a minute here about the homestead and farmstead exclusion, and then we have final adoption on June 22nd. So it sounds like the group is good at 2.5. Are there any other questions on this before I move to item 4?
Ed, I just want to talk about two of those risks quickly. As I noted earlier, if the recommendation or the guideline, I should say, is 1 child per seat on a bus, we are going to increase our number of runs for transportation. I anticipate a fairly significant increase in transportation, maybe as much as 1/3 of an increase in overall costs. And Ed, that would probably equate to a couple $100,000, right?
That's right. Yep.
I anticipate that with those guidelines. And the other thing that we are fairly committed doing is we're going to make an investment. Those 21 students in cyber school, we're going to make an investment over the summer with some online curriculum and some content so that we don't increase that number a whole bunch. We need to have something to sell to families, though. If someone comes in and says, hey, PA Virtual Cyber Charter has this all figured out, they have the platform in place, they have synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, and you guys are only offering one or the other, we need to be able to counteract that and encourage people to stay in Fairview, get a Fairview education, and earn a Fairview diploma. So our plan is to invest a significant amount of that grant money in developing that online content. We're going to need it one way or another, whether we're red or yellow in the future, or whether we always have students who are taking classes online for one reason or another. So it's not a bad investment. I think it's going to be money that's going to be well spent and save us down the road.
Eric, of all the concerns I've heard, that's the biggest one. So I would support that 100%.
I agree, David. It's the biggest one that we have, I think, administratively. I mean, transportation is obviously a concern, but that just is what it is. I know some families are making a commitment to drive their child to school this year, and that's fine. But I think you're right. It's that online piece. I think for as well as we did with it over the last 3 months, and we probably did as well as any local school district, it's not going to be good enough. We know that moving forward. We'll lose people if those are the conditions next year. So we're making a commitment to improve that, and we have the capacity to do it. We have the people and the knowledge, and we think we have most of the infrastructure in place for that already. So that's our commitment over the summer. Sorry, Ed.
No problem. So that's really it. That's all I have on budget. I'm going to move on to number 4, which is the Act 1 exclusion resolution. Let me just bring this up for you. So, going back to David's question, there's a fund that gets built up through the year from gaming revenue. So each casino, each slot machine, table games, whatever, they have to pay a certain percentage of the dollars of revenue in the casino to this fund. And that builds up over the year. And then as of May 1st, they certify there's enough or not enough in that fund to pay out these tax reduction dollars to the school districts. This has been going, I think, since 0809. 0809 was the first year. And the amount we've received has been pretty consistent over that time. In fact, I think I have a comparison here, which I'll show you. So this doesn't go back to 0809, but it shows you the last several years. You can see back to 1112, 264,414, pretty consistent. 265, a little bit higher this next year, 2021. The amount of savings per homestead, and homestead means that this is the primary residence for the resident. This is typically where they live through the year. You can see this has gone down pretty steadily over time. That's because the number of homesteads and farmsteads have increased over that period of time. So 3,050. So I think those residents who just haven't applied in the past learn about it, or catch on, someone tells them and they apply for it. Rental properties don't qualify, so it has to be a residence that someone owns. And then this just shows you graphically what that looks like. So number of homesteads and farmsteads on the orange line using the left scale, and the tax savings on the right side. So we are just shy of $87. And then the resolution is here. So each year the board has to pass a resolution which stipulates the amount of money that's being paid by the state to Fairview School District, and that in this case $265,155.52. It stipulates the number of homesteads, 3,022, the number of farmsteads, 28, and the total of those two, 3,050. And then we calculate based on those numbers how much is available to each qualified homestead and farmstead. In this case, $86.99. So what we'll do on the tax bills, you might remember this from last year, is we will list your assessed value of your home, whatever it is, and then we'll reduce it by the homestead exclusion. In this case, for 2021, it's $4,642. That'll be deducted from your assessed value. The net then total will be applied then, or multiplied times the millage, to get your tax bill on the July 1 tax bills that come out. So that's what this resolution does. George, did I miss anything in that explanation?
No, I thought that was pretty good, Ed. Yeah, this resolution has been adapted for the last dozen years anyway. And it really is a good in explaining the various steps that you get to. So, yeah, I don't think you missed anything there, Ed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
There is a typo, just so.
Oh, is there? Okay.
I'll get it to you offline before next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So, in addition to the final budget motion on June 22nd, we'll bring back a motion for this exclusion resolution as well. So, Eric, that takes us through 5. I can bring up the special ed contract, which is number 6.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. I was muted. These special ed contracts are our traditional contracts with the intermediate unit. One being for special ed programs. And the other is...
Eric, this just shows the group exactly what's covered in the contract.
Yep, this would be our occupational therapy, our physical therapy, behavior consultant, all the services that we use from the IU. Vision, deaf and hard of hearing.
Ed, if you could take that down, there's some confidential information on that document.
Okay.
So those are the services that we use from the intermediate unit. And secondly, the Bethesda Partial Emotional Support Program, Keith?
Yes, that would be our the piece of our special ed that we use for services in the refocus room. And now that's across all 3 buildings this year. And part of that is money through our special education.
Okay. Item number 7, the Fortinet purchase. This is Brian Junker's area. This is a am I muted? Okay. This is a technology purchase. This is a purchase that we're actually moving up 1 year in the rotation, and Brian is actually here to speak to that. Brian, I'm not going to pretend to know what you know about this, so it's all yours.
Can you guys hear me?
Brian, I've got that quote up from Networking Technologies.
Okay. What? Can you hear me okay, Ed?
Yes.
Okay. This is a replacement of a piece of equipment that's critical to our operation. It's a multi-function piece of equipment that allows us to protect our network from the outside as well as the inside for viruses and intrusions. It does all of our content filtering for keeping the kids away from sites that we don't want them to go on the internet, both when they're at the district and when they're at home on their iPads. It provides all of our tracking and logging of internet traffic. What I'm doing with this is since this is such a critical piece of equipment, I'm proposing that we upgrade it to a pair of them to provide a level of fault tolerance. If this piece of equipment were to fail, we're totally out of business, both internally and externally, until it would be replaced. So I'm proposing that we put in a pair of them. They'll run in lockstep so that if one were to fail, the other one will keep running. I kind of outlined in a memo to you guys, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, what all the functionality of it is, but that's what it is. That's what it does. I see it as critical to our distance learning that we foresee for next year. So can I answer any questions?
Brian, I was just trying to find your document real quick here, and I have so many files open, it's just hard to find.
Okay.
Hi, this is Eric Hayes, and my question is, does that product help the district protect against ransomware?
Yes.
And is it different significantly from the defenses against ransomware that you have currently?
No, it's the same. We are currently running a FortiGate 800C, which was purchased in June of 2014. This is a upgraded replacement for that piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
And Ed, is this built into your forecast then, since it was moved up a year in purchasing?
Yeah, so this would come out of the capital projects fund. So this would not impact the general fund that we've been talking about. The 2.5% would not impact that fund at all. we do have it built into the capital projects fund, I guess, to answer your question. Brian, here's that note that you provided.
That fault tolerance piece that Brian was referring to, that extra level of security, it's about a $10,000 cost associated with that, according to Brian, to have that backup piece. The original piece of equipment is about low 20s, right?
Well, there's really three pieces of equipment: the two firewalls and the analyzer, which is what we get all of our reporting and stuff out of. So we aren't putting in two analyzers, but the cost of the analyzer and a single FortiGate would be about $10,000 less than the 33 and change.
The failover is important, especially with the distance learning kind of, the initiative there, and what we know we're going to need to do next year. I think it's critical to have that failover.
Hi, Brian. This is Eric again. My question is, who programs the analyzer? Who has control of the analyzer? Is that something, do you, or is the company responsible for that?
No, we do.
And do they have a service that they sell the district to also assist with that, or is it all done in-house?
There are built-in templates that we use to generate reports when needed.
So it sounds like it's done all in-house.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Of course, there is the model with any IT stuff now is a yearly subscription. So there is a service and support subscription, that yearly contract that goes along with it. The first year's covered in the purchase, but I'll be coming back in future years for the service support.
That covers software updates and things like that.
Correct.
But it doesn't cover the hardware other than what is warranted by the manufacturer, right?
Right.
Okay.
The service agreement would. That is, if one of the pair were to fail or the analyzer were to fail, I have the service and support would be a 24/7 contract where I can contact them and they'll work with us over the phone and through WebExes and stuff to determine that it is a hardware failure, and if it is, they'll ship us a new box.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Jennifer. Just a question. I understand the reasons and justification for having, two pieces of the same equipment for instant, turnover if there's a failure. But my question is, is it buying both pieces at the same time right now? It appears that one of them still has some life left on it. Is there a reason you would want to stagger the purchases so that you don't have to keep purchasing two at the same time?
Well, the new pair, they need to be bought in pairs if you're going to do the fault tolerance. I couldn't fault tolerant with an old 10-year-old, or not 10 years old, but a product purchased in 2014 with a product that's purchased in 2020.
Okay.
Brian, how long do these last?
About 6 or 7 years.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
you're proposing the 1 year, not the 3 year.
I'm proposing the 1 year, yeah.
And the reason for that?
That's just kind of the way we've always done it, Fran, with budgeting and so forth.
Okay.
Kind of past practice, I guess.
And there's somewhat of a savings, but it's not. I guess it's not tremendous, but it's.
No, it's not huge.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that was a purchase that, as we said, was originally scheduled out of next year's capital projects purchase, and we're moving that up a year. So About 7 years is the replacement cycle for that, and we're making this one a 6-year, just for the reason of mainly just because of the increased use that we're going to have and amount of traffic with our proposed distance learning.
Hey, Eric, just one more note. We talked about possibly paying for this out of either the CARES or the Safety Security Grant, because they both have a virtual learning component to them. So we might come back with a proposal to pay from one of those sources versus cap projects. So
that's right.
More to come on that.
That'll be on for your consideration at the next meeting. Also, John Facchetti has been working on Brian's new space at the middle school. A few meetings ago, we talked about, when we were talking about high school renovation, Brian was losing his, what we refer to as the junker bunker at the high school. He was losing that space, so we were relocating him to the middle school, which is actually a much better space for him with for the amount of time that they come and go. It gives them their own entrance and exit area there as well. So John has been fixing up that room. They're working on it right now. John, do you want to give a quick overview of your expenses there? I think John's with us. You're muted if you are, John.
Sorry, that's embarrassing. We still do. We do this all the time, and we still talk when mute's on. We're doing a space in the middle school. We're adding 2 offices and then a work area. It was kind of an underused room in the tech lab of the middle school they can do all the same things in the area that's provided of their classroom. They really didn't need a separate room. It was really just a Lego room. So we're also moving the server room from the high school to the middle school. So I have to put an HVAC system in his room and in the server room. So that's what the $6,000 is. Doors are really expensive. We're going to probably change the door. We're not going to add the fob system until that is redone when we redo the high school. So he has like a crash. It's just a deadbolt right now. It's an outside door. He'll have a crash bar so he can exit in case of an emergency and lock it a lot easier. There's a new electrical panel. We're insulating the offices with soundproofing. Drywall stud, the sink base, there's plumbing there. So we're putting a hand washing sink and I guess a coffee sink. That's it. It does add up, but when you look at the plans of some other rooms, we're doing it all in-house, even including the HVAC. So that's nice. There's significant savings there. So I'm pretty happy with the project. We kind of have the walls built already, but that's about it. Any questions on that room?
This would be paid from cap projects as well.
Lastly, then in committee of the whole is item number 9, Ed. This is the consortium property and liability insurance.
Yeah, so we bring the renewal of the insurance to you each year. Let me bring up the information here for you. There's a folder out here if you ever want to reference the information. So this is the pricing comparison here. You can see the 1920 current year expiring versus the proposed 2021, and you can see the change between the two. I'll show you some information on one of the PowerPoints they gave me about why this is increasing, but there's been a lot of storms across the country in the last year, a lot of fires in California, a number of reasons why the reinsurance market has been increasing their pricing, and that's impacting property liability insurance policies. So the expiring policy, you can see all these various pieces of coverage, is $92,910. The renewal is $113,089. It's up about 16% and includes a new item which is called student accident coverage. So we have not had this coverage in the past. It's a new item, but it's mandatory across the consortium that we belong to. and it'll provide some coverage in the case of student accidents, whether that is part of an athletic activity or in school, in gym, whatever the case might be. There's some student accident coverage there. It could pay some of a deductible, could pay some of a copay, or where a student doesn't have coverage, it could be the primary coverage, for that student. So this will be something we'll have to get out to the families and just let them know we have the coverage out there. Other than that, excess property, excess liability. So we carry 15 million umbrella over all of our policies. We increased that several years ago from 10 million to 15, just because the cost of the additional 5 million was pretty small. Anyway, it includes the board errors and omissions policy, appraisals. You can see some other fees and so on. And then just real quick here, let me just show you. So this is what they showed us this past week in our renewal meeting. So a lot of catastrophic claims since 2017. You can see here, wildfires, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, impacting reinsurance costs. You can see claims are the renewal cost for clean risk, which basically is a district like ours that has really had no claims in the past couple of years. Those increases have been 30 to 40%. Less favorable risks, those districts that have had claims, and some have had claims for fires, those are increasing by upwards of 65%. You can see some of the claims. Sexual abuse continues to be high, number one on the list for them. Our policy does include coverage in this area. Auto losses, and then cyber liability. And then also they're talking about the pandemic, COVID-19, being possibly the largest insurance loss that they've incurred. So we may see some impact in the future too, from the COVID-19 shutdown and losses that insurance companies are having to cover there. And just real quick, I want to show you the setup of the policy right here. So being in a consortium gives us a lot of advantages. One is we have overall property protection. So you can see excess property of 400 million. This is placed through travelers. So of the 21 districts that are in the consortium, this is a top level coverage in addition to our policy that covers all the property for the districts. And then excess liability, this is the normal 5 million that goes above policies. We have 15 million on our policy. And then we have property, we have general liability, we have vehicle, and then we have the school district liabilities. This is the board liability coverage for errors and omissions. And then the benefit to us potentially in the future is a self-insured piece that we could possibly get back some of this in the future, depending on claims and how those go through. So that's the structure of our policy. And then there's some other reference information there too that you can, that's just there for your info. Questions in that area?
Hi, Ed. This is Eric.
Yes.
My question is, how often does that policy get invoked?
By the Fairview School District or by other districts?
Well, by Fairview, say, in a typical year, does that policy get used how many times?
So I would say the last time, Eric, we've used the policy would have been a due process claim. And Eric or Keith, I don't recall exactly when this occurred, but we had some coverage there. It basically covers legal fees. Even George might remember. That would have been the last time.
Yeah, that was about 2 years ago, Ed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other questions there, I can move on to budget and finance. So property tax appeals. I'll bring up the file on this. Each year, for several years now, we've been filing property tax appeals. It's be in the budget and finance folder. What I do is I get from the assessment office the sales for the past year. So these run May 1st through April 30th. So through April 30th of 2020. What I asked them to do is to give us all the properties that have sold in Fairview during that period of time. And then what I do is I take the selling price. So you can see on this spreadsheet, the selling price for this property is on 612 Pasadena. She sold on September 17 for $259,000. What I do is I compare that to the assessed value, which is $159,000. If the difference between those two generates additional school tax of $1,000 or more, that's our criteria, then it qualifies for appeal. We've had that criteria in place now for, I'm going to say, the last 4 or 5 years. It was lower at one time. It was $750 at one time. We've increased it to $1,000. So it takes about $50,000 to $60,000 of change in assessed value to generate $1,000 difference in tax. So what I do is I go through that spreadsheet. It probably contains a couple hundred sales, and I apply this formula to all the sales in that spreadsheet, and the ones that pop over 1,000 qualify. So the spreadsheet you have that you can see are just those properties that qualify for appeal. So I'm not showing the names on this spreadsheet. I am showing the addresses. By the way, this information is all public. You can get it yourself off the assessment office website. We do this once a year. The due date for the appeal is August 1st. The attorney who used to file these for us at the Quinn firm, Paul Burrows, has retired, and his replacement, the person that would be doing this work, would be Andy Schmidt at the Quinn firm. George, anything you'd want to add to that?
No, only to say that Andy has not only worked with Paul, but he's been handling some assessment appeals for the Erie Public Schools on a conflict basis from the Knox firm. So he's pretty well versed on what he's going to be doing.
So part of the strategy back in 2007 when the Act 1 Index first started was it was a 3-part strategy, but one of those parts was to file annual property tax appeals. And that at least gets those assessed values that are too low at the market level, represented typically by the selling price. Sometimes that isn't the case, but almost always, I sit in these hearings each year, almost always the assessed value is adjusted to the selling price. Questions on appeals? The next item is copier paper. So what we did, there's been some changes we've made for the year coming up here. We have a copier release, which has already been approved by the board, and we've reduced the number of machines. You might recall that conversation back when that was discussed. So we've got fewer machines in the buildings. For the middle school and elementary school, exactly half the number of machines we used to have. And we're thinking that with this forced change to virtual learning, that there probably will be an impact on the amount of paper used, probably a lot less. So what we did for the paper orders, we cut it in half. We're buying from WV Mason. The price for the copier paper, the white, is $25.91 per carton. That's pretty consistent. I'll show you the price history in just a minute here. But we can buy this paper at any time during the next school year at the same price and no cost for shipping. So there's really no risk to reducing our order quantity initially. What we used to do is buy the full year's quantity And of course, we'd have to find places to store it in the buildings. This will make it a little bit easier to store, and will give us a chance to assess exactly how much paper is being used by the buildings. Now you will see, I'll explain this, you'll see in the high school, there's 113 cartons versus the middle school 20 and the elementary 88. The high school is actually the school that uses the least amount of paper. The reason why the carton count is so high here is because the resource room is in the high school. There's a couple of production machines in there. They run a lot of the jobs across the district. So the elementary and middle school will send jobs to the high school to run up there. And that's why we have this much paper being purchased for the high school. So these quantities are exactly half what was being requested for the schools. And then we also have some color paper, which is their special application type stuff. But the primary use is the white paper. And then the cost analysis, let me go back here. You can see over time, this is the cost per carton, $25.91 being the most recent. It's jumped around a little bit, did get down to $21.13 back in 17-18, but it's been up around that 25 to 27 range for most of those years. So that is copier paper. Questions in that area? Extreme Networks wireless support. So we have wireless access points. If you need any technical explanation, Brian, I think, is probably still on the line and can provide that. But anyway, this is the annual contract to support those new wireless access points. Brian, I think those went in maybe 2 years ago, not last summer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Last summer.
Oh, last summer? Okay. So the total cost is $4,917, and that is up just slightly. You can see it's up just shy of 1%.
Going from that color.
Questions on item 12?
Brian just noted, Ed, that's 185 access points throughout the district.
Okay. Quinn Law Firm retainer. So each year I ask George to outline the hours he's put into his work over the last year. And you can see his summary here. I just copy and pasted his email in here. He outlines the number of hours. They were up over the past year, but he's indicated that we should keep the retainer the same. It has been 37,000 for the current year, and that's the recommendation for this next year. He also notes that for other work, the hourly rate is $130 per hour. George, anything else on that?
No, I was trying to remember when I sent you that email why the hours went up this year, and I think it had to do with more than anything with all the things that we were doing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I expect those to come back down.
Some of it you say is related to the high school project, and some to the Act 34 hearing.
Yeah, that's right.
Just for the new board members, there aren't a lot of other hours for George, things outside of the retainer. Those would mainly be some very specific special education issues. And oftentimes when we have George represent us in a special ed, like a due process type thing, that's through an insurance provider as well. And so George will work directly with our carrier for that. Most of what George does with us, I can't even think of something, George, really outside of the retainer, with the exception of a student discipline hearing or a special education due process case.
Those are probably the two biggest examples. Yeah, and usually those are covered by the insurance, like we mentioned earlier. The due process case about 2 years ago, that was the rate that the carrier covered.
Yeah. This might also be a good time. It's not on the agenda, but this might also be a good time to tell the board that we got word today. We were involved with the Office of Civil Rights case in the district, and George represented us on that. We won the original case, but then the family, if you recall, it was an athletics equity issue case. The family appealed the decision by OCR. We got word from the federal department today from Washington, D.C. that the case is now closed, and they sided with the district, and that we handled things appropriately and didn't discriminate against the students. So that's what makes George worth every penny of that retainer and then some. So he was very well prepared for that, and Keith and Matt Lane and all the folks involved did a really good job of presenting the case there. So that's a good feeling to know that that one is behind us.
Yeah, it sure is.
Took a while.
It did. Almost a year.
Yeah.
I can tell you between the administrative group, we keep George pretty busy. I talk to George several times a week between email and phone calls, and I have a number of questions for him, and I know a lot of our administrators do. So George is constantly researching school code and other kinds of research and getting us back answers and recommendations on ways to proceed.
And I enjoy it. So thanks for that.
The next item is budget amendment. I think, yes, budget amendment. So there's not much here. You can see up in the revenue section. So the revenues are at the top here, and they're dated. So you've been approving amendments through the year. The one dated June 22nd just cleans up some grant revenue sources. You can see IDEA is going down a little bit. Title I's going up, or I'm sorry, down. Title II's up. So we adjust these to actual based on the actual revenues as they come through. And then on the spending side, only one item for Title IV, and that's just to make a change of $287. So that's it for amendments. And then the one call now renewal. This is the calling system we use we can place calls to folks across the district. This is the renewal invoice, $2,235, including a regulatory fee. And then the history I just showed you a second ago shows you the past years and how that compares. So no change from this current year at the $2,235. The next item is UNS service agreement. Let me bring this up real quick here. This is the firm that does HVAC work for us, and they monitor systems and controls through the year. John's going to talk more about this.
Yeah, we are in the, I think the 6th year. We had a 5-year contract with them, and year 6 and 7 were optional. We decided to pick up the option this year. This is the company that does kind of 2 contracts for us. One covers our controls. So there's a digital system that we access to set the temperatures in the buildings, to schedule when things turn on and things turn off, and it keeps things running very efficiently. And it also, you can, from one screen, I can sit down and I can see the temperature in every room across the district to see if something's working or something's too hot or too cold, or I can make adjustments on the fly from there. So they operate that, but then they also have a mechanical contract with them that covers the thermostats, the actuators, anything that controls the heat is covered for free, including parts. Then they also do some preventative maintenance hours on every building. It fluctuates a little bit with times of year throughout the buildings. Our high school is an old pneumatic system that runs on air pressure. It takes a lot more to keep that building going, so they're always replacing and checking all these little teeny tiny air control valves and actuators to keep that building pretty level. For as old as that building is and as poor as that system is, we do a pretty good job keeping it between 68 and 72 is what we shoot for. Like our elementary school is all digital, the whole building, because it was built, in the last 20 years. So it's a little bit less on the control side, but it still has its share of mechanical problems, which are still covered. So they're a good company. We have no issues with their service, and I'd like to stay with them. Now that contract's going to change once the new high school, when it happens. The contract can probably go down because right now we're weighted towards the high school on our HVAC because it's the oldest system and the most inefficient system, so it gets the most work. So once that school is all new, the service contract should go down or will go down. So I'll start working on that next year. Any questions on anything? Now, my maintenance staff, they still change the belts and filters on all of our equipment and all of our air handlers across the district. That's not included in the preventative maintenance. And if it was, that contract would be probably closer in the $80,000 to $90,000 range, just based on some other districts that have a company that includes that. So we do save that money by doing those components in-house. That's all I have.
Thanks, John. The next item is the budgetary transfer. Again, this is a small item as well. So we're just cleaning up some functional areas across the budget. So we're looking for any areas that are negative, and we're transferring budget dollars in if we have them available to make them positive. So that's all this transfer does for us. That is 17. And then 18 is our accounting software renewal. So this is the invoice, $55,000. So last year we presented to the board a 3-year agreement to keep the charge level for a 3-year period. So last year was 55. This is the second year of that 3-year agreement. So this 55 includes cloud hosting. So they host our server. It's at a Rackspace warehouse, I think in Baltimore, I'm told. That is roughly half the cost of this 55. And then we have Microsoft licensing fees, which is probably another 15 to 20. And then we have the support hours from our company, K-12. So if we have issues, problems, we send a help desk ticket through to Cerenic Software, and they respond with phone call or a fix or however it's resolved. We have a number of hours that are included in this contract that we can use through the year. So this is that annual contract renewal. Questions on 18?
If no questions for Ed, we'll move on to education and policy. Just 2 items there for Justin.
Yeah, so number 19, you'll see on the personnel meeting or personnel minutes tonight that Corinne McBriar, our middle school guidance counselor, is on for resignation. They are relocating. So Steve took that job description, made some really minor edits to that job description. Probably the biggest one was taking the PSSA testing off that person's plate, because Mr. Herring has been doing that the last few years anyway. And then the next thing on there, number 20, the ECTS Transition Center Agreement. That's just a yearly agreement we have. Some of our students who are in need of some transition skills to enter the workforce have varying schedules to attend the transition center. Not sure what that'll look like this year, but we're going with the agreement.
That transition center, for those of you who don't know, is located up at the tech school in the back. We vary the number of students who go there each year sort of varies based on need. Keith, where are we currently?
Yeah, 2 years ago we had 0, but last year we used 5 slots, and then those 5 kiddos will be in their second year next year. So all five will go back this upcoming fall.
Yeah, it's a great program. They learn some life skills. They get to go out into the workplace. They have a kitchen in there, cash register,
mock hotel room.
Yeah, they have a hotel room that they learn how to make beds and do some general maintenance things too. So it's a great program. Scott Enterprises does a nice job working with the transition center to support a lot of what happens up there. We have 2 items in employee relations ECA. We're just getting around to paying that bill from the water main break. I think that was in February. $5,300 bill to Spader for coming out and fixing that. And John, there's a credit there too. They credited us back $700 off of that bill.
Yeah, that's what took so long is we kind of went back and forth on. They knocked 8 man hours off the job because they caused a little bit of trouble while they were on campus with the small water line that ran to the CAB. They bumped it while they were digging, and we went back and forth, and they took some money off while they did that repair. So part of it's kind of the risk of anytime you dig a hole, you don't. We knew it was marked and we kind of saw it was there, but they still got it. So there's some inherent risk with digging in the dirt, but then at the same time, it was also a little careless. So we kind of split the trouble on that one. So.
And lastly on that agenda is our personnel matters. We do have one summer helper coming in. That's in the area of technology, Paul Schlebach. Paul was with us last year. Last year, when we return people, we give them an increase of 50 cents per hour. So you can see Paul there is at $8.50 rather than the traditional $8 that we typically pay. We do have our cafeteria summer cooks and helpers and aides coming in to coordinate the summer feeding program that we're going to offer for students. Justin mentioned Corinne McBriar's resignation. We have one transfer there, Alyssa Frith from the high school attendance secretary. She has bumped into that middle school attendance secretary position. So Alyssa will be leaving Matt and Luke and will be joining Steve and Mike. Should be a great addition down there. We will be looking to replace her at the high school, and that job will be posted. And we have 3 AmeriCorps coming in for the summer. Mackenzie is a Fairview grad. Is Abigail as well? Justin?
Abigail is not.
Abigail is not. Mackenzie graduated from Fairview.
Mackenzie is.
Yeah, Cecilia was with us last year at the middle school, and Abigail coming back this summer. So a lot of their job this summer will be working on a kindergarten program at the elementary school and some other things across the district. The AmeriCorps folks were available this summer at a significantly reduced cost. Justin, what's the overall price tag on that?
I believe it's $500 total for all 3 of them. We had a little bit of a credit because the one member from the elementary school, which we paid for, didn't finish her service just due to the pandemic. So we had a little bit of a credit, and then we're paying $500 for all 3 of them. So
yeah.
They're going to do some remediation and some kindergarten readiness stuff and help out with our summer reading program. And Ben has some creative ways to involve them.
And that Mr. Natali, I believe wraps up our committee of the whole. We have a very short agenda, so this might be a good time if there were any questions on any of these items or anything else to discuss, would be the time to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. I do have one thing to report that we've been dealing with the past couple days. We talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the meeting, and that is the building project is facing a bit of a hurdle. We've been informed that any new addition, new construction to school buildings statewide, well, not statewide, but based on your location, requires a tornado shelter structure. And this tornado shelter structure adds a lot of concrete, a lot of material, a lot of design work, and it's estimated it's going to impact our construction budget by the tune of over $3 million. So we are in contact. It's been suggested to us by our architect to seek a waiver or some legislative relief or moratorium of enforcement, some form of action at the state level, and to help us get through this, hopefully without absorbing that. So I had contact with Senator Laughlin. He is willing to meet on an emergency basis, urgent basis with our team, our planning team, our architect, and see what if anything can be done at the state level to alleviate this burden. So working on that. Anything else to report from the four corners of the district? Excellent graduation production. I just have to say that. Just tremendous job by Dr. Lane and his staff. Dr. Kincaid's input, of course. I don't know if many of you had a chance to tune in or watch it, but just an amazing production. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really kudos to the high school. Job well done. Kelly Millay, Lori Hitt, Nicole Daly, all the folks behind the scene. Carl Fonacello, who just did an outstanding job with the videography. And I'd hate to see Carl break down his hourly rate for that project. He'd hate to see it too, probably. But just a really amazing job. And that's what you see, because that stuff is public, but really equal heavy lifting at the elementary school and the middle school, getting through the end of the school year, wrapping things up, returning items to students, late nights, Ben and Julie and Mike and Steve standing outside, returning things, parents pulling up and getting their items, and great response to that. I thought Ben and Julie had a great idea using the buses down there, if you didn't see that, to kind of tunnel traffic through there. We also did a little bicycle collection here at the district. We collected roughly 100 bicycles that we are going to redistribute to families here at the end of this week and early next week. We also had some really significant contributions, financial contributions from various families, as well as our Fairview Cares organization. Our Fairview Cares organization decided to back this project. And so along with the bikes, we're providing a helmet to all the kiddos who are going to be getting a bicycle. And it was just amazing to see all the people roll in with some of them are brand new, practically brand new bikes, and offer to help in any way they could. So John and his crew right now are repairing and making sure they're all road safe before we give them out to any students. And we'll make that happen here toward the end of this week. So just another fun project that we were able to do in the district and kind of give back. The foundation, as you probably know, has been offering meals to various families in the community. Justin and Steve have really been, and Ben and Matt have really been spearheading that. It happens on Tuesday evenings. What would you say, Justin, about 40 meals every Tuesday night?
Yeah, pretty close to that.
We started with Sneaky Pete's and then Avonia. We used the Cakery. We've used Sabos, and then this week they're using Chico's. So we're trying to give back to our communities as well. In these restaurants, for example, Avonia wasn't open that night. It was a Tuesday night, and they weren't opening until Wednesday. So we were able to provide a little business for one of our local supporters and businesses, as well as provide for the community. So it's pretty rewarding giving out those meals to families who could really use a little extra boost right now. We just received word. You may have seen the story. We just found out that one of our graduating seniors has a pretty rare form of cancer, and you know that doesn't take long for our team to jump into gear to get something going for that family. So you'll hear more about that in the coming days. But there's plans in place already. Many people contacted us today, teachers, the foundation, on ways that they could get involved and support that family. They're going to need some financial help along the way here, a lot of travel and things of that nature. So it doesn't take long for this community, though, to get on board with that and start a fund. And so we'll be rolling that out here in the next day or two. Anything else for us? It's been busy. Normally this is kind of a slow time for us, but there's no slowing down right now because we have lots of plans to do for next year and lots of decisions to make. And I know you're going to be getting a ton of questions as board members from families. What's next year going to look like? We're going to get that information out as quickly as we can. It's going to be different. We can tell you that for sure because we are starting school in either yellow or green. We know that. And even in green isn't business as usual. It still reduces the number of kids in a classroom. It reduces the number of kids in a bus. It changes the way we do food service and transportation. So it's going to look different next year. And we're going to try to strike that balance to ease that burden on parents and continue as, doing what we do here. So, and you'll all be a part of that. You'll be a part of that planning as a part of that committee. And I'll make sure that those committee chairs include you in their correspondence and their meetings. So if you have a chance to join in, that you can.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. Anyone else want to have any public comment? There is a section of the public meeting for public comment, but I thought we'd breeze through that during the meeting. Does anyone else have any questions on grounds that we've plowed tonight?
Just a kudos on both the baccalaureate and the graduation. We watched both, even though we don't have any graduating seniors, but really enjoyed both. And then just to restate what Dr. Kincaid said about the VOTEC and the countywide schedule, that's critical to their success, that all the schools be on the same schedule. And so whatever we can do to fall in with the rest of the schools, that would be a huge benefit to their success.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? Okay, it's been a long year.
Alan?
Go ahead.
Hey, just a quick update. I went out to see Paul Bocek. He had asked for a copy of the budget, so I printed one off and stopped at his house and dropped it off. He's very anxious to get back to meetings and was curious to know exactly when we're going to be meeting in person, in the future. So we'll get him that date as soon as we figure out exactly when that's going to be. I guess July coming up here. But he's in good shape and good spirits and ready to attend board meetings in the future.
That's great to hear, Ed. Give him our best if you do talk with him again. All right. Anyone
Alan?
else? Yes, Kelly.
I'm sorry, my mic was off earlier. This is Kelly. Was there any resolution to the Parks and Rec $18,000? Because I know I was talking with Brandon Nornhold afterwards.
So Kelly, we got some financials back from Nate.
Yeah.
And we told Brandon and Nate that we're going to hold on any discussion until we know our plans for reentry, this fall. So if we're in a situation where we don't know or aren't going to have programs running in the buildings in the fall, that changes the financial picture for Parks and Rec.
It sure does.
So we kind of want to wait for those plans before we move forward and have that discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to adjourn the Committee of the Whole meeting and call the public board meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand, join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you remain standing for a brief moment of silence for our COVID victims, I believe we did lose another member of our community. Obviously, this continues, and we're dealing with it as a school district, but there are families that are suffering from loss of loved ones, and those are sick or disabled from this disease. So brief moment of silence for those folks. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead with the agenda. I have it on my phone here. I'm going to try to read it best I can. Do any visitors wish to be recognized? We don't. Anyone online that's with us that wish to address the board? Hearing none. We've had some public comment already, but any other further public comment on agenda items?
Pam, how
Okay.
about that little guy with you? Does he have a comment? He's out.
He's sound asleep.
Oh, he couldn't wait till the public meeting. Couldn't make it that far. That's great.
And rumor has it was the budget presentation, but that's just a rumor. Not 100% on that.
All right,
Brian started that.
Business Operations Committee of the Whole. Personnel matters. I move board approval of personnel matters as recommended and or read by the superintendent and as identified on the personnel list be approved, and with the stipulation that the positions be filled only if the program or activity is to be conducted as determined by board action. Can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. And that concludes the public board meeting. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Looks like we're going to have a lot of motions on June 22nd. Till then, be safe, and we are adjourned.
Look for emails. Look for emails from the heads of these committees to join into their meetings in the coming weeks.
Thank
you
Dr.
all. Have a good night.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the
all.
90-degree weather tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night,
you.
guys.
Good night.
Thank you.